Hello, world. Today I wanted to talk about the potential introduction of Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, into the Canadian market and perhaps the expanding infrastructure it could lead to. This footage was taken in Sheshan on the outskirts of Shanghai in Songjiang district. Full disclosure, I never used to put much stock or pay attention to politics. However, as I got older, I started to observe and experience that these decisions indeed do affect our lives, and it's probably better to be in the loop. I guess that's just me maturing. I want to come at this from the angle of I'm a Canadian who's based abroad. I frequently go and am often based in China. So rather than talk too in the political sphere and get wrapped up in ideology and taking sides, instead, I want to look at this from a simpler perspective. I want to look at it from how certain policies might benefit the average Canadian. And a lot of this experience is going to be personal, Canadians I've talked to in my communities abroad and back home. When I first visited China in 2018, it was impossible not to notice the availability of electric scooters, electric cars, and just how a lot of the buses were electric as well. And again, the high speed rails are purely electric. I started to wonder, why don't we have such options back in Canada? Was it infrastructure? Was it pricing? Was it logistics? Was it politics? So over the years, I started to look more into this. So I asked other Canadians, would you buy any of this? Would you buy an electric scooter? Would you buy an e-bike? Would you buy an electric car? And some of them were on board for it. However, the options in Canada for cars are mostly limited to Tesla, even until today. There aren't a lot of e-bike options either. And even when it comes to electric cars, the infrastructure, the charging could be much better. When I visited Quebec a few years ago, we rented a Tesla, and there was a few scares of this battery is going to hit zero before we find the next charging station. So that's another issue there. The charging infrastructure could be much improved. However, this is something that's definitely going to happen with the adoption of EVs. The more EVs adopted, the more charging stations we'll have. Either that the government or the cities are going to have to double down, or the companies are going to have to double down and start building more charging stations first, in the hope or the gamble that more people will adopt them. So it's something that's going to have to come at one point if we want to switch to more electric based cars. However, right now it doesn't really hold up. Now, this could be corrected with time. However, we need more options, more electric vehicles in the Canadian market to do this. Now, like it or not, China is the biggest manufacturer of EVs worldwide. The biggest formal barrier there are the taxes and tariffs. The US slapped on their taxes, and we did the same. And perhaps now Mark Carney is in China. He'll renegotiate the taxes and tariff deals with the Chinese president. Now, reworking these trade deals could have a tremendous impact on Canadians, because we could essentially get Chinese EVs at an affordable price in Canada. Also, when we put those taxes on the electric vehicle market, China fought back and taxed our canola industry. China is our second biggest buyer of canola oil, and our agricultural sector really took a hit. In my eyes, there's no reason why we should continue to tax China on this if we could have a net benefit from removing such taxes. Also, as the current political climate between the US and Canada kind of heats up, I think it's important for Canada to look for other trade partners to step out of the shadow of the US and be more connected on the global stage. Now, I really want to hone in and focus on the adoption of EVs in Canada, and that's the main reason I'm making this video. So I often hear in the news cheap Chinese vehicles. Now, I think this is kind of poisoning the well. Electric technology still does have a way to develop for sure. Any emerging technology is going to take time, it's going to take refinement. Batteries have burnt in Teslas as well as other electric vehicles. And it's just something that comes with the territory of treading on new technology. So I think it's just fear mongering when we're like, oh, Chinese EVs are bad. It's like that, when you actually look into it, that doesn't seem to be the case. Also, if there's such a worry about Chinese vehicles being not up to par, we can do what perhaps BYD did in Thailand, Brazil, I believe Spain as well. Companies like BYD have actually made manufacturing done locally. That means if we open factories here in Canada, that is potentially more jobs for Canadians, and we get to make sure the manufacturing lives up to a Canadian standard. So there's less fear of, oh, they're producing them cheap in China. Now, why would a Chinese brand, something like BYD, do this? Obviously, it's still worth it because they're getting access to the Canadian market. And if they have local manufacturing, you can actually keep costs down on a lot of things that are imported. Also, on that note, Canada does have certain rare earth minerals that are used in batteries, so we could potentially source that locally rather than importing everything from China or elsewhere. With local manufacturing and production, if we're able to create affordable EVs for the average person, there's no reason people wouldn't adopt them, which would lead to wider adopted electric vehicle infrastructure, charging ports, and such. And it would be better as a whole for our society. For one, car emissions, and also gas has just gotten really expensive. For anyone who drives a traditional car, you see the prices, sometimes fluctuate into pretty high ranges when you want to re-up on gas. Sometimes of the year, it's just ridiculous. I personally can think of several people who I talked to. A friend of mine, he just went to university and he wanted to buy his first car. He was doing his research purely online and he came across a BYD car he wanted to purchase. It was roughly $30,000, and that they don't sell BYD in Canada, and you'd have to import it. Now, after import taxes, the price was no longer feasible. Part of the reason he wanted to buy this car is because he's a student. He was looking to buy his first car, and primarily he wanted something affordable and practical. For those of you paying attention to the footage, you would have just seen an electric bus pass in front of the crosswalk. Now, I'd be on board to even get more electric infrastructure in Canada. That includes electric buses, which we do have some in some parts. In Oakville, we do have fully electric buses. I'd also like to see electric railways. Currently in Toronto area, Ontario area, we do have the GO train. There are issues with this. There's huge benefits to it, don't get me wrong. However, it's still diesel powered, and it would be a good long-term goal for Canada to start switching over to a lot of electric powered rails, buses. So I'd like to see this. And this could potentially be worked out with China, as China has some of the best high-speed rails in the world. I'd definitely be excited to see that rather than coming at it from, an opposition point saying, China this, China bad. I would rather just see what would benefit the average Canadian. And I don't think we'd be losing out to China if we introduced more electric buses, perhaps high-speed rails, or just overall good options for electric infrastructure. Now, other than just going green, which is important that we have less of a negative impact on our environment because we live in it, we also need to keep in mind that high prices, and especially the price of some of the gasoline cars these days, and the lack of affordability essentially gatekeeps cars to people who can afford it. It's not easy in Canada to have to, buy gas, make expensive car payments, and have your insurance. So more affordable EVs is definitely a plus. And I'd like to see that. And I believe reworking those trade deals with China could potentially lead to better outcomes for Canadians. Now, coming a little bit away from electronic cars, I'd like to talk about e-bikes, e-scooters. I, for one, would be happy to see them adopted in Canada. Now, given people shouldn't be riding them on the sidewalk, however, having affordable e-bikes, e-scooters could help a lot of people, maybe even students who are not ready to buy a car or who just don't want to buy a car or don't like to drive cars, bike to work. This also would have a good impact on getting more people off the road. So that leads to lower congestion of cars. because there's always going to be some people who need to, take the bus or take their cars to work or wherever they're going. And having some of those people go, hey, I'll bike. Hey, an e-scooter sounds like a good idea. That's going to free up the road for the rest of you. And even if you don't ride them, it's a net benefit to have less people on the road for you to get to your destination faster. These are good things. And potentially working with China, reworking those trade deals, doing proper business could help Canadians and Chinese. And that's what trade and international engagement is supposed to be about. Let's again face it that China is the second world largest economy in the world. And some economists say, if you measure by PPP, that it is the largest economy in the world. So I definitely think we're losing out by not, at least considering the possibility. Now, I know there's always going to be naysayers. There are people literally in Canada that I know who, Carney, when Carney said or announced that he's going to China, the reaction was, it was hostility. I think it was, an overreaction. Some people said, Carney's going to sell China. He's going to sell Canada to China. And I think that's ridiculous. For the record, the US does plenty of business with China, and people aren't saying, oh, Trump is selling the US to China. So I think that is, an oversimplification. Um, I don't want to say these people are completely uneducated, but I'd say look into it before you make such conclusions. Hey, I could be wrong. This is just a perspective. This is um, just thoughts. I'm not saying it will go in this direction. These are projections, these are hopes, these are aspirations. I am not advocating for a hostile takeover. I'm looking for cooperation between countries and potential joint ventures. Canada has an abundance of natural resources, lithium, cobalt, nickel, and China has the tech and development to help this all come together. So if we cooperate, we're going to go further than just on our own. Now, to sum up my scatterbrained thoughts, I would like to see China-Canadian relations go in a direction that actually benefits Canadians. I mean, more affordable EVs for Canadians, improved infrastructure for Canadians, local jobs, if we can get manufacturing here, for Canadians, and better consumer choice for Canadians. Canada stands to gain significantly from, good relations with China. So I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be entertaining or entering into some sort of agreement. And this isn't really just about politics or picking sides. At the end of the day, it's how we as Canadians can benefit. And using global opportunities to improve life at home doesn't seem like such a bad idea to me. But what do you think? Do you think adopting Chinese electric vehicles would be a benefit to Canadians? Do you think there's any good points here, or am I just talking nonsense? Please let me know. Great news. Before I uploaded this, new news came out that Carney has decided to reduce taxes and tariffs on EVs from China, I believe from 100% down to around 6%, and they're allowing 49,000 EVs per year to be sold in Canada. I think it's going to be a great start. And yeah, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is a good idea? And how do you think this could impact Canadians' lives?